Warning. This program contains frank and mature discussions intended to educate and advocate on the subjects of sexuality, sex, and gender and body positivity. Due to the nature of the topics being discussed, this may include subject matter and language that some may find offensive. This program is intended for adults only. If you are under the age of 18, if such material offends you, or if it is illegal to view such material in your community, please exit now.
Brown chicken, brown cow. 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 This is fun. Brown chicken, brown cow. Brown chicken, brown cow.
Welcome to the Brown Chicken, Brown Cow first episode of our Polyamory month. We're having a great time here. We're going to have a great month as well. We're talking about all the different aspects of polyamory, talking to some of the great celebrities out there that you may know and may not know, as well as some of the fans and some of the people that are exploring polyamory. But today we have a very special guest on the show. It is amazing. We have one of the pinnacles of polyamory podcasting. We're going to bring her on right now. Her name is Minx from Polyamory Weekly. Minx, how you doing?
I'm a pinnacle. I'm doing great now that I'm a pinnacle.
Well, you've been, I've been podcasting in different areas since 95, 94, but you've been doing this show since when?
2005.
A very, very dedicated 12, almost 13 years. So that needs to be applauded. That's an amazing task.
Thank you. It's There are definitely times when I just think, oh gosh, I just don't feel like being a podcaster this week. But it's really fun. It's really changed my life in so many amazing ways. I've got to meet so many people and just learn more about sex than I ever knew there was to learn.
Well, you know what? We also have a couple of my co-hosts on the air today I want to introduce you to. First, we're going to introduce Heather Beth. Heather Beth, say hi real quick.
Hi.
This is Heather Beth. and to my right, your left, is Jessie. Jessie, come on in.
Hey, everyone. I'm so excited. I'm really excited to interview Cunning Minx. I've already geeked out on her before we started recording, so just to catch everyone up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, we're honored to have you here on the show. It was some of the work that you have done that got me personally into polyamory and opened the door for myself to explore this world, but also my wife and a number of the other things that I've done for the communities have been in part because of you. So I just want to say thank you to start off.
Awesome. That means I get a toaster.
Yes, I can send you a toaster or a cup. I can send you a cup more readily than a toaster, I think.
I thought toasters were just for lesbians, but I guess they're for poly people too.
You know what? It was an old lesbian joke of when you convert someone, you get a toaster. So, I kind of went with a really, really old joke. Sorry about that.
I did not know that I just didn't realize it applied to poly. Man, I feel like I got gypped. I never got a toaster.
Well, I think the key piece of poly paraphernalia that I have seen is a hot tub. Like, I have yet to meet a poly person that just doesn't have a hot tub. So, I guess you wouldn't have a hot tub, maybe?
Apparently,
I need to hang out with more currently broken.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
broken
we need
hot tub so fast.
I know, we need to get another one. So, but guess we're not poly in the time that our hot tub is not working. Oh, well.
Oh, no. You got your poly card revoked.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so Minx, I am also super excited to be interviewing you right now. I think you're phenomenal. I love the work that you do, and I've loved just following the podcast over the years and just kind of learning along with you and listening and watching you learn. It's been super exciting for me. So a lot of people don't necessarily know about what being polyamorous is, and so they kind of, would want to start from the basics. So what would you say is the number one thing that you've learned from being poly?
Poly people really like to give their opinion about polyamory. Sorry, that was a little tongue-in-cheek. That is one of the big things I've learned from poly podcasting, is that poly people really like to talk about polyamory and communication and things. From being poly itself, I would say that probably the biggest thing that I've learned is I do not know as much about myself or the world as I thought I did. when I was monogamous, I thought I was a good communicator. I thought I was, good, game, and willing. And wow, I was, I think, for that stage in my life. But it really took trying to be polyamorous for me to figure out that, wow, you just have to be brutally honest with yourself. You have to have the courage to be vulnerable. You have to have the courage to ask for what you want. You have to have the courage to hear what somebody else wants and understand that what they want is not necessarily about you. And a host of other things. It just requires a lot more communication and courage and strength and self-awareness than I ever knew that I had within me. But there's also, of course, the requisite. The return for all that is there's a lot of joy. I have this wonderful family and this wonderful sense of community that I've always wanted, but I never actually got from my biological family or any other community. So it's good stuff all around.
That is definitely good stuff. I'm wondering, so for some of our listeners who might not be very aware of what it might be, what is your personal definition of polyamory?
I'm kind of old school. I still go with the Wikipedia definition, which actually, now that I think about it, I haven't checked it recently. It might have changed. But when I first looked it up, Wikipedia's definition was multiple long-term loving committed relationships with the full knowledge and consent of all parties involved. Now, some people take issue with some parts of that definition. Multiple, generally not. Long-term, some poly relationships are fairly short-term. There's something called a polycomic, where somebody comes into your life maybe once every year or once every 3 years. And is that long-term? Does that meet the definition? But I do think that what's most important about that particular definition is the full knowledge and consent of all parties involved. All right, so basically everybody knows what's going on. And I would actually go with enthusiastic consent because there have definitely been poly situations where my existence was tolerated but not really welcomed, and that really just kind of sucks. So that would be my definition of polyamory, basically.
I think that that definition fits very well. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there for people, obviously, to come up with their own idea. That's one thing I've noticed because I was a facilitator, a leader here in Sacramento of the local polyamory group. And through the period of time that I started and walked away from the group just about a year ago to move on to this project, I've seen a lot of terms, a lot of jargon, it seems like poly people like to make up words or add on to our current lexicon of knowledge. I know there are a few of them that I have in mind, but what are some of your favorite poly words or poly uses?
Some of the first poly words that I learned from my listeners and from, the internet were very useful. Things like the term metamour, your partner's partner with whom you're not necessarily romantically or sexually involved. That's very handy. Right. So, for example, I'm with Lusty Guy, and his wife, Elle, is not my romantic partner or a sexual partner, although I suppose one could argue that, we care about each other. We have something like an intimate friendship, so kind of debate whether that works. But I call her my metamour because I'm not in an actual, sexual and romantic relationship with her specifically, but she is attached to my partner who is. And I also am a fan of the word frubble instead of compersion. Frubble is the British term, and it's way cuter than the American term compersion, which I think sounds more like a chemistry experiment. And that is used. Frubble. I know, isn't it cute? Can't you just hear some Brits saying, "Oh, it had such a frubbly evening"? I love it.
It kind of sounds like a Harry Potter word.
It does. It sounds like what it is. And that is the term that we generally use to describe the non-sexual joy that we feel in seeing our partner happy with someone else. So it's kind of like, to me, I compare it to something like, you see your friend finally getting her MBA and you're so happy for her because it's what she wanted, right? Or you see your kid playing in a soccer game and even though they're not winning, they're trying really hard and they're really playing well with the team, so you're happy for him. That's kind of what I think of, frubble or compersion as. It's not generally, it can be sexual, but it generally isn't. It's just basically being happy for someone you care about.
What a concept. Oh, my gosh.
Imagine that.
Yeah, and if you go to More Than Two has a website, an entire polyglossary site, and I had fun with it on a recent episode because there were a lot of terms I never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Comet was a fairly new one. That comet is used to refer to somebody who comes into your life very short, at long and erratic intervals, and is very intense. And isn't that a great way to describe someone?
That is. I have a new poly term that I heard recently, and it's called Second-Degree Metamour, which would be like your Metamour's partner, and that's like my new favorite poly term.
I hadn't heard that one.
I heard it was just in a poly Facebook group that I found. It was great.
That's really cool. It's really descriptive. From my experience of hanging around with poly people, like you all said, they do like to kind of sex geeks, poly people do kind of like to make up terms for things and describe things. I also heard petamour recently, which is like your metamour's pet, or maybe your pet and your metamour, your partner's pet or something, and just like their relationships. It was pretty cute. It
cute.
Sounds to me. It sounds to me like a lot of the practices and words that poly folks use could just benefit anybody.
I agree. And I generally think that if there is not a word that accurately describes what you're feeling or who you are, you should make one up. I think they're useful all around. I think the first neologism that I coined was boobiesexual, to describe, in particular, it was used to describe boobiesexual. So it was how I describe myself, which is women that are not particularly interested in other women below the waist, but who really just fucking love boobies. Because who doesn't love boobies?
Hey.
And the term was later applied to also refer to, for example, gay men who are really into boobs but not interested in women below the waist. So, boobiesexual is basically somebody who has one particular orientation, but in terms of women is interested in boobies. And, that worked for me. It's kind of a silly term, but, it's descriptive. And if anybody wants to use it, by the way, feel free.
I was going to say, I've heard you use boobiesexual in the past throughout the years, and it always just made me kind of squeal because I understand that point of view. Because, there's different levels of relationship commitments or understanding each other or being attracted to somebody for different aspects. So I just kind of dig it. Moving on to my next question. As I said at the beginning of the show, you've been doing Polyamory Weekly now for a number of years, and you have a lot of experiences. Do you have any high points that you can share? Any something that really just struck you well, or maybe just something about the show that warms your heart still?
Oh, that's easy on both counts. Really, my favorite part of podcasting is going out to events and being able to meet people and hear their stories.
Right.
I love hearing about, how people learned about poly and what kind of resources they're getting. And, they're all excited, poly newbies. I love meeting people that decided for one reason or another that this was their passion and they went on to become, or they are budding sex educators. And so they decided to become counselors or speakers or maybe a blogger or a podcaster. I love it when people find their passion, and it's doubly so when their passion is poly or sex ed in some sort. So going out to live events and meeting people and hearing their stories, because everybody's story is different from mine. And, my story is my story, whatever, it's there. But I just love the variety and diversity of stories that I hear. And there's just nothing like hearing that live from somebody's lips. And in response to your second question, what warms my heart? Every time somebody emails me and says, I didn't even know this was a thing. I thought there was something wrong with me. Now I know the word polyamory. Now I can Google it and find people like me, and I could find your resource and a bunch of other resources, and now I know that it's okay to be this way. And that's basically why I give up all my nights and weekends to do this podcast, because, I just think that there are a lot of people out there that for one reason or another are feeling isolated and marginalized. And if we can help, if my guests can come on and share an experience that resonates with them, well, that's kind of why I'm here.
Absolutely. We have received emails from people who have listened to our show and connected with the topic and became huge fans because of the things we were talking about when it came to mental health and physical health and sexuality and how those things are still part of our lives. And it just recharged our fans, and it just really made a connection with us that makes me chill and shiver and smile every time I think about it. But Minx, we're going to take a real quick break because bills, and we have sponsors, and people want to help us out.
Hi, guys. This is Sean Monkey McAnee, Monkey for short. You know what? If you're in town here in Sacramento, or if you're anywhere, you need to check out Midtown Moxies. They are a Sacramento burlesque troupe that is blowing my doors off. They are amazing. Generally, they have 2 shows a month. One called the Midtown Moxies and one called Moxie Crush. You need to go to midtownmoxies.com or find them on Facebook. They are amazing. They're beautiful. They're funny as hell. Trust me, I wouldn't be advertising with them if I didn't believe in them. They are freaking fantastic. Enough said. Go to midtownmoxies.com.
Welcome back to the Brown Chicken, Brown Cow, Sex Positive Podcast. We're here with Cunning Minx today. Woohoo! That's a monkey, everybody. We're here with Cunning Minx. Hey, Minx, can I ask you a question? Just a silly barnyard type of question. If you were an animal, what animal would you be?
I know it's really trite to say, but I have a cat. I love cats. I want to be a cat. I know I should really say something like I'm a bonobo, like swinging from the trees. Actually, when I did see monkeys, I love what they can do with their tails. Like it's another appendage. I'm like, dude, if I were a monkey, see now I'm switching my answer. I want half monkey, half cat, right? So if I were a monkey,
that's the nice thing about poly is you don't have to choose, right? Life is not binary.
Right.
So you could be a monkey.
So, yeah. Exactly. I mean, I could have 2 hands full of food and 2 feet full of something else, and then I could still hold my iPhone in my tail. So that would be awesome.
And at least one appendage for a boobie.
Exactly.
There you go. Very important. So, okay, I feel like since poly is kind of entering pop culture more and more these days, I think people sort of have their go-to things that they think about when they think about polyamory. People are always asking, how do you prevent yourself from being jealous? Do you ever get jealous? You get all these questions, I could never share. But I'm wondering, what's something that people don't realize about poly? What's something that you think doesn't enter people's brains when they think about it?
There are a lot of things. It's a big one.
Right.
First of all, I always tell people that jealousy is probably not going to be the thing that you think it's going to be. There will be a lot of fears and insecurities that will likely surface because you kind of can't hide from them quite as easily as you can with monogamy. Because with monogamy, you can generally keep things from surfacing. And poly, that's a little bit more difficult just because you've got more moving parts. I think that one thing that heterosexual men in particular don't think about when they're like, ooh, polyamory. One of the things they don't think about is the fact that, the way our culture is set up, that, if you're heterosexual and you're with a woman, then she's probably going to have a lot easier time dating than you are. So you may think, it's going to be like FFM threesomes the whole time. And it's like, it's more likely that she's going to be out getting a lot of fun. And, you're probably going to have just as hard of a time dating as, you did back in monogamous days. But that being said, it's just a different type of dating. You will eventually, the thing is, I actually think it's good that it sometimes takes a while to narrow partners down to find somebody that's really right for you.
It's very true. Yeah, I think that it's interesting to me that I have met a lot of men who feel that way when they dive into the poly world, but I don't understand why, because it's no different than the monogamous dating world, right? It was still hard to find people as a male. I don't know why poly would be. It's just harder. It's just like dating, but with all of these extra filters.
I think there's more of a fantasy as opposed to reality when they're thinking of the concept, and they kind of forget that, no, this is reality. And it's, remember how hard it was trying to find that OkCupid date when you were single? Yeah, now it's probably going to be even harder because, a lot of people judge you for being poly. And in fact, I've heard many instances where somebody will be flirting with someone on OkCupid, and even though they say they're poly and they make it really clear, the person thinks that they're cheating. And when the person discovers, they're like, oh, no, I'm honestly poly, and my husband's into it, and we're all good, and let's go have brunch. And they're like, you obscene, expletive. And they'll start, calling somebody names because how dare they be honest with their partners instead of cheating like a decent person. That happens more often than I would care to admit.
Right?
I'm trying to think. I know. I think it's hysterical. It's like, just cheat and lie about it like a decent person. But, I'm trying to think of a smarter, more intelligent answer to your question. And I think it's probably something kind of vague. Like, you're going to end up, the thing that will break you up, if you do break up, will not be the poly. It's going to be something that you had never anticipated. It's kind of like you're going to end up arguing about and having communication issues over something that you just wouldn't even have imagined in a monogamous life because just more stuff comes to the surface. So it might end up being something about, somebody needs more physical space, or there may be, you may end up fighting about the kitchen. That is your irreconcilable difference. Or it may be about types or numbers of partners. The thing is, it's almost never anything having to do with poly. It's that, when you get deep into it, sometimes you can realize that, you and your partner essentially want different things. And now I feel like such a downer for saying that. It's a terrible answer.
No.
But, well, it's true. It just comes down to the fact that poly is really going to bring any insecurities or any differences into the light. And you really do have to be a strong and confident and secure person to deal with that, because what people tend to do is if something comes that they don't like, they make a rule against it, and that just almost never works out the way you think it's going to. Like, making a rule against something doesn't decrease the desire or the need in the other person. It just forces them to hide it. And so, really you have to find a way to deal with your partner's wants and needs and your own that is not making a rule about it. And that's kind of hard.
It is. I mean, I wish that, high schools, because we get to the age of understanding, would teach more about communication skills and understanding each other's needs and wants and desires, and how to communicate these different people, because we get into relationships at such a young age that this isn't ever talked about. And so one of the things that I found in poly is that when you step into this world, I have to talk about all these things now? Yes, and you have to own it too. So that's one of the things that I learned by facilitating meetings. What have you found in that aspect? I mean, one of the things that poly people like to say, first you communicate, then you communicate, then you communicate more. What's been your impression of that?
I think that one of the challenges with that is, we say communication are the 3 rules of poly, but we don't necessarily give a lot of detail as to what good communication looks like. And I think we have some misconceptions about what good communication looks like. And by the way, preach. I think that we should be fucking teaching communication in preschool is what we need to do. I mean, the fact that, grown-up ass adults are out in the world and not able to ask for what they want and not able to identify their emotions and say them with that level of emotional intelligence is it's just a tragedy, and it's something we do need to fix.
Exactly.
One of the things I see people writing me about a lot is that they discover polyamory and they're really into it and they like the idea and maybe they feel it's the way they've always been, and they get into a poly situation with real life people, each of whom has their own needs and wants and desires and flaws and agency, and then things get a little tricky. And they write to me and say, I feel like I'm supposed to do this, but is it okay for me to feel this way? And I feel like I spend a lot of time telling people, look, everything you feel is okay. There are no shoulds. Whatever you feel is what you feel. If you feel jealous, if you feel angry, I feel petty a lot, right? I just feel I just feel like I'm kind of a petty person a lot of the time. A lot of the things that I think and feel are kind of unreasonable, and they can even be kind of mean to others. But it's our job there is no should. It's okay to feel however you feel. So get out of that, like that I should be happy for my partner when he's going out, and I thought I would be okay, but now I'm all sad and brokenhearted, and I'm a horrible person. It's like, okay, this is not helpful. Yeah. There is no should. You feel how you feel. But it's our job now. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead. It's our job now.
It's our job now that we've identified, wow, I feel really insecure when my partner's going out, or I feel really shitty, I feel really lonely, I feel petty, I feel angry he's going out with somebody else, even though I said it was okay and we talked about it and all of that. Fine. So own that, acknowledge it, don't be ashamed of what you're feeling, but now it's our job to look a little bit deeper. Okay, why am I feeling that? What is it that I'm afraid is going to happen? Like, let's dig into this emotion and kind of figure out why it's there. And this is actually, can be unpleasant, but I think it's kind of fun. Okay, so what is it that I'm afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that, here's a standard one. I'm afraid that, she's prettier than me. Okay, and then what? What does that mean? Well, if she's prettier than me, and then maybe they'll have better sex than we have. And then what? Well, if she's prettier than me and they have better sex than we have, then he's going to like her more than me. And then what? Well, if she's prettier and they have better sex and he likes her more than me, then maybe I'm not going to be as important. Then maybe he's going to leave me. Then maybe I'm going to get kicked out of the house and end up homeless and alone with 100 cats. So,
wow, that went off quickly.
Yeah, well, that's actually an exercise that we call it the and then what exercise. And the idea is that you take your fear and you extend it out to the point of ridiculousness. Like, really, like, what is the worst possible fucking thing that could happen? Well, mine always end up, and then I die homeless and alone, because that's the biggest thing that I'm afraid of. So, but I take it to that point and acknowledging that, okay, that is the very worst that can happen, and then acknowledging as grown-ups that, okay, that's probably not going to happen, but now we know where that fear is leading us, right? So now we know what we're actually afraid of, and now we can say, okay, so what will help me feel like I'm not going to die homeless and alone? So, and then we come out, and there are all kinds of remedies that you can do for that. One of my favorites is to, take date night when your partner's out with somebody else, to take that as a treat for yourself. Do something that you normally can't do if you have a partner when your partner is out. So, for example, Elle likes to stay home and eat tacos and play World of Warcraft when we go out on our date night, because she generally doesn't do that when we're home. Exactly. And for me, it's more like
tacos and knitting, but yeah.
Yeah. Tacos and wow, right. So, make it a treat for you. And the other thing that they like to do is to reconnect afterwards. Elle calls it marking her territory. So when her partner goes out on a date with somebody else and then comes back, that kind of turns her on. And so she likes to basically have sex afterwards, kind of like mine. Okay, you had him, now he's mine. Which sounds a little un-poly, I know, but it makes her happy. It sort of like cements, it gets rid of any insecurity, and it sort of cements their connection. So it's the generic way to say it is reconnect, right? So then you reconnect. But it really works for her, and it works for him, and it works for me, because frankly, I would much rather have my Metamour reconnecting with, my partner than getting angry and jealous and passive aggressive at me. So I'm like, please go fuck him, because that's going to save me from the drama.
Definitely.
Well, I don't think anybody wants passive aggressiveness in their lives, whether they're poly or monogamous or whatever. I teach a lot about relationships and sexuality, and my message to people is always like, I don't care whether you want to be poly or non-monogamous. I think the non-monogamous community has a lot to offer all of us, right? So I was thinking about some of what we were talking about. Kind of reminds me of some of the tools that you've discussed. You kind of talked about like marking your territory, which reminds me of like the 3Ds that you and Leslie guy talk about. And then also there's something called a user manual, but I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of like tease our listeners about that. And maybe we could talk about that when we come back from the break. So how do you guys feel about taking a quick break real quick and hearing a song from one of our
I'm good
local entertainers? Cool.
I am so excited about that. I've heard this is a good one.
Recently we were out at the studio of an amazing couple. They're amazing artists, amazing musicians, Eddie and Rose. But what's even more special about this is they wrote a song about Jessa Lee called The Reverie.
What can I say? I'm amused.
You are amused.
Can't wait to hear it.
So we're going to hear from our sponsors. We're going to hear this amazing song, and we'll be back. And we're going to talk to the amazing Minx right after this.
Hello, this is David Loretto-Mola with the BCBC Podcast. Now, I know you're sitting there thinking, what could David possibly tell me about condoms that I don't already know? Here's a fact. Do you get a condom that delivers to you monthly? I don't think you do. But if you order Lucky Blow condoms, they're great. They'll get you through whatever you need to do. And when you're done, no worries. There's no babies coming out of nothing. That's a fact. You can quote me on that. David Loretto-Mola says, buy Lucky Blow condoms. You'll never regret it.
Jessa Lee, now how is it that you could be the one I met the night before while I was sleeping off a dream? Jessa Lee, what great impossibility that we would meet first then and now again right here in reality. Oh, Jessa Lee, you're a reverie. Oh, Jessa Lee, hear the melody. Jessa Lee, why did you cast your spell on me? I would have been just fine taking my time, but now I don't wanna leave. Jessa Lee, you captured me, then set me free, but didn't chain me down or lock me up, just handed me the key. Oh, Jessa Lee, you're a reverie. Oh, Jessa Lee, hear the melody. Jessa Lee, I'm pulled in by your gravity, like a swirling supernova shining to eternity. Jessa Lee, I never thought that we could see so eye to eye. A kiss goodbye could never be enough for me. From Jessa Lee, you're a reverie. Oh, Jessa Lee, hear the melody. Oh, Jessa Lee, now how is it that you could be the one I met the night before while I was sleeping off a dream? Jessa Lee, I never thought that we could see so eye to eye. A kiss goodbye could never be enough for me. From Jessa Lee, you're a reverie. Oh, Jessa Lee, hear the melody.
And we're back here at the Brown Chicken, Brown Cow podcast with our guest, Cunning Minx from Polyamory Weekly. Wow, that was a really beautiful song. I don't know why, but it kind of struck a chord with me. So we're back. So Cunning Minx, I wanted to ask you, I thought this might be a fun question. What's the biggest unexpected benefit of being poly? I have an example that I thought of yesterday because my roommate was teasing me. I have a lot of leftovers because I go out to eat with my partners quite a bit. And that is a really great benefit of being poly that I did not think about before this. What's one that you could possibly name?
Well, I'll say something that's been on my mind lately because I actually just moved in with Lusty Guy and Elle, and it's the first time I've cohabitated with a romantic partner since the 90s, so there was a lot of anxiety on my part. I don't think quite so much on theirs, but definitely on mine, because I am super particular about my living spaces, and unapologetically so. But there have been some really fantastic benefits of moving in together, and not the least of which is things like, well, Seattle rent is ridiculously expensive, so big cost savings there, more money to go out to nice dinners and hotels and things like that. But I think one of the sweetest things I've discovered that was a little bit unexpected was that I never feed my cat anymore. That sounds weird, but when I get up and do my yoga in the mornings, Elle, the cat, knows that somebody's up and manages to talk Elle into feeding her. And Elle, being the softie that she is, feeds the cat while I'm doing yoga, so she doesn't have to wait. The other thing is that very often I don't come home until 7 or 8 at night, and it used to be that the cat had to wait until I got home. But now she knows that she can just start mewing around 5 o'clock, and Elle or Lusty Guy will feed her. So my cat's on a much more regular feeding schedule, which is not something I thought would be a big deal. It's kind of nice, though. I did worry that I'm just gone a lot. And, when I lived alone, I think she got really bored during the day. And so she has many more people to play with her and feed her and pet her and spoil her. So it's all about the kids,
Well, yeah, just as a transition.
Kind of more love.
Just as a follow-up, I have a huge puppy. Awesome. Her name is Storm. And my 2 partners come over, and they take her to the park. They take her out running. They take her out to play ball. They come to babysit her. So you're right.
Metamour.
Those types of things. Yeah, Metamours.
Oh, that is so sweet. I love that so much. The madam is commenting from behind the scenes that dogs have owners and cats have staff, and I like that. So maybe once we all figure out what type of animals we are, then we can have a little bit more self-knowledge, which is a little bit of a segue back into what we were talking about before the break. I think Jessie got a little adorably excited about her song, and I would be excited about it too. But I want to bring us back to
I don't know.
That is pretty fucking cool, I have to say. You get your own songs. That's pretty awesome.
I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to chill. Oh, you're so sweet.
So
oh, my God, stop. No.
It's the Jessie Blushometer.
What? This is the tables have turned.
I believe we call that the Jessilometer.
It is the Jessilometer.
Oh my God, that is okay. All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Oh, it's funny. I love it. No donuts for you unless you blush at least 4 times per vodcast, Jessie.
No, what is happening right now?
Okay, but seriously, I'm super excited about this user manual idea, and I might have actually used it for myself. Can you tell us a little bit about what the user manual is, and why you created it, and how people can use it?
It's funny. I can't remember the exact origin story of why I started writing the user manual. I really should have documented that. I think it's because I was doing a lot of dating and spent a lot of time on OkCupid in my lifetime. And I came to realize that, a lot of people were treating me in the way that basically their past dates and spouses and partners had wanted to be treated. And sometimes that aligned with what I wanted and sometimes it didn't. And it's such a clumsy process to go through and have, somebody try and, do something nice for you. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's really not my thing. So I thought, I come from a pedagogical background. And I'm a tech marketer by trade. And so I thought, well, clearly all we need is documentation. And that's the way to go. So I set about writing my own user manual because, I just sort of wanted to make it easier for people to date me. I know I can be, and it sounds weird, but I can actually be kind of hard to get to know. I'm a very nervous dater, and so I don't think I date very well. And I have been called like sort of standoffish and aloof, and I don't mean to be, but I figured, if I document everything, like this is what I react well to, and these are good types of dates for me, and these are things that you should probably never say to me if you ever want to see me again, and just a little bit of background, like kind of, it's more of a, this is where I'm coming from, like this is a little context for our movie character, and it's not a dating profile because it's not about these are my favorite movies and here's stuff I like. It's more about this is my family background. This is what family means to me. And here, let me tell you a little story to explain why that this is what family means to me. And I just think it's a lot more useful in terms of sort of knowing who I am and how I tick. And, I wrote mine, and because I was talking about it on the podcast, I actually post it publicly so that people can see, here's the example of the user manual. And
oh, that's great.
Yeah, and now when I teach the classes on how to write a user manual, I always tell people, look, you don't have to post it publicly if you don't want to. I personally think it's a wonderful exercise in self-knowledge and self-awareness, even if you never show it to anybody. But for you to know, this is my background, this is my relationship with my family, and here is a very succinct story from my childhood that kind of tells you a little bit about why I act the way I do nowadays. Here's what family means to me. Here's 3 people that really influenced me and the way I think and act, and here's a brief story about each one. That I find is really helpful. Now, a lot of that we do end up getting on dating, but it takes a while, and I think having this background information can really help someone figure out, A, if they want to date you or not, and B, sort of make it a little bit easier to get to know you. And so I do post it online, and I encourage people to write them out. And a lot of people have actually, and then sent them to me. And a lot of people actually do what I recommend, which is post a link to your user manual on your dating profile. So, and say, especially for women, because women's inboxes tend to be, we kind of have to sort through our inboxes, whereas the men who are seeking women anyway tend to get kind of crickets, and they have to be doing all the outreach, just the way things happen to be. So putting a link to your user manual and saying, here's my user manual, read this before you approach me, and then you can put in a little test to see if they actually read it. And that was, for me, that was a great way to filter. Like I would put something in the first message response question, or I would say, read the user manual and then respond with an element that's in part B. And so if they if their outreach message does not include a reference to part B, I know they didn't read it, and so I'm delete.
Gone.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to put a quiz at the end that's like, what kind of Jessely are you?
There you go. But I find that, I just think it's a good process for, self-awareness and kind of being able to describe who you are and why you tick. It's a little bit more useful than here are my favorite movies and, here are 5 things I can't live without kind of thing.
That's awesome. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about your show, just a little bit, because there's a segment on your show that I fell in love with a long time ago, and I think I've written in, and a couple other people have written in, and you've read things on the air quite regularly, and that's the Happy Poly Moment. Can you tell me how that got started, and maybe one or two of your favorite moments that you've done over the years?
Favorite moment, I'd have to think back. I can tell you how it got started, though, is, when you do a show that I didn't intend for my show to be an advice show, but it ended up being at least partially an advice show. And if you have people writing into you, then you know that a lot of the emails that you get are just fucking heartbreaking. Like you just want to reach out and give the person a hug because they've let things get so bad by the time they actually reach out to you. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I could have helped you sooner. I wish I could even help you now. I don't know how much an email is actually going to help. And if the messages were something that I thought other people could benefit from as well, then, I'll read them on the show and kind of give my advice. But it can be a little depressing to, read these emails of people treating themselves and others pretty badly over and over again. And I thought it was giving kind of a skewed idea of poly, because the people weren't writing in saying poly is great. They were all writing in saying, my poly relationship is falling apart, or my husband just told me that we're poly and has been dating somebody for 2 years. What do I do? And I'm like, oh, shit, what can I tell you? You should probably leave if you self-identify as monogamous. So I put in a happy poly moment to counter that, and basically to give people an opportunity to say, here's an example of poly working out. Let's celebrate the joys. And of course, we still talk about advice. And of course, we're still, giving as much advice as, people write in and want to have. But I think it's really important to celebrate the joys in life too, and say, here are these wonderful moments when, I think my favorite happy poly moments are when people are afraid that something's going to be awkward, like with their partner or their metamour, and that it ends up being just this beautiful, snuggly, cuddly, feet by the fire, back massaging, pets curled up, ice cream, puppies, butterflies, unicorns, and it's wonderful. And I'm like, I understand that that's a moment in time, and it's not always going to be like that, and relationships have ebb and flow. But I think it's so important to appreciate those moments when our relationship nourishes us and gives back to us.
Absolutely. Like I said, I think those are some of the moments of your show that I get all kind of giddy and excited, because you're going to about tell something that is working, or something that made someone feel good, or something that is positive in the world, and it's not all my boyfriend did this, or my husband did this, or I'm having problems with these type of conflicts. So it makes me feel good every time I hear it. So thank you.
Yeah, me too.
All right. You know what? We're going to take one more break. We're going to hear from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to hand it off to Heather Beth, because she has some serious questions for you, because I am not the serious question guy. Heather's the serious question gal. I'm just the goofy guy that thought up this weird thing. Anyway, we'll be back right after
Well, we need a monkey in the barnyard, too. So.
Oh, geez, monkey in the barnyard. All right. We'll be back right after this.
Hi guys, this is Sean Monkey McEnany, Monkey for short. What you need to know now is that brown chicken, brown cow needs your love. It needs your help, and personally, we could use your money. But short of that, what you need to do is go out and like our Facebook page. Number 2, give us a review on whatever podcast ability you have. Go out to iTunes, go out to Google Play, give us a good review, because that helps. Number 3, subscribe. Subscribe to our podcast, because that helps our numbers, helps us with advertisers, helps us with everything. It makes us look good, actually. And number 4, and this is very important, come close to the speaker. It's fantastic. You can go out to Patreon and support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/BCBC podcast. You can support us at whatever level of support you think you can manage. I don't want you to give us money if you can't do it, but I want you to give us some money, and we'll give you back some love as well. We'll give you back some stuff. We'll talk about you on the radio. Who knows? But in the end, supporting us helps keep the show going. Subscribing to the podcast gives us better numbers. And liking our Facebook page, guess what? You always know when the show's coming. So, this is Monkey. You're you. We are together. Cuckoo-cuckoo. Fantastic. See you on the next show. Brown chicken, brown cow.
Hey, welcome back to the Brown Chicken, Brown Cow podcast. We are live with one of our favorite people to listen to, one of our favorite podcasting colleagues, although we're still trying to even get in the same category as her, but Cunning Minx. So, Minx, I had some questions that were kind of, as mentioned, I guess a little bit more on the serious note, but one of the things I've enjoyed the most about listening to your show is kind of learning along with you on some of the journey that you've been on around some of the more like social and cultural justice aspects of that you might encounter in life, but also specifically in polyamory. So I really enjoyed listening to your kind of process around gender, to you becoming more aware around racial justice. Maybe I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about what those experiences have been like for you, and if there are other pieces that you feel like you want to bring in more representation on your show as well.
Yeah, I think being a podcaster in general is very humbling because people on the internet, and especially poly people, are really not afraid to call you out when you're being a shit. So there are a lot of times when I, unintentionally said things that were reflective of my own biases and my own limited experiences. And I'm actually very gratified that people took the time to call me out, and usually in a very, very polite way. I'm very proud of the fact that I've been podcasting for, 12 years now, going on 13, and we've never received a single piece of hate mail. And
wow,
that's awesome.
And there have been times when, I said or did things that fans disagreed with, and the way they write in is always so fucking respectful and polite. I'm like, go you. I have the best fans ever.
Very cool.
I still remember there was one that a couple of people wrote in about they had some issues with the advice that I gave to a particular listener, and a couple of people wrote in about it. So I thought, okay, if 2 or 3 people took the time to write in, that probably means there's something wrong, because I'm assuming each one of them represents 100 or 1,000 people. So, let me go back and listen to the show and see why they're responding that way. And everybody was so polite about it. They're like, look, I really love you and I love your show. I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I really think that you did a disservice to this guy. Super duper polite. And when you compare that to the rhetoric we're seeing nowadays on, with respect to politics and all of that, I'm really, really proud that everybody in the Poly Weekly community is just generally very respectful. If you look at our Facebook page, and if you listen to the emails that we read, and the callers, whenever they call in, all of our engagements are really respectful and thoughtful and tend to be fairly compassionate. You don't see a lot of infighting, and I'm really proud of that. With respect to what I've learned, there's so much I can't even begin. I think the first time we talked about asexuality, I was kind of skeptical of it. And very promptly, some people wrote in and said, nope, asexuality is a thing. I am. Here's my experience. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And the truth was I just hadn't given it very much thought. And I think that most of my biases are like that. They're there because I hadn't really given them much thought. And my only exposure to anything would have been either nothing or maybe something I'd seen on TV. And we all know how accurate that is. So I sort of take the same approach as when I was a teacher. I taught for several years, and I have a pedagogical background, is that my students always taught me things. Yes, I was there to teach them things, but they're always going to teach me probably more than I teach them. And I really feel like it's a two-way street. And as you point out, I've learned a lot of my own prejudices and biases. I've been working really hard, especially in the age of Cheetolini, to become a lot more diverse and inclusive. I think that's one good thing that's happened as a result of this, sorry to be political, but this fucking ridiculous sham of a presidency, is that it's really made, I think the way I put it when I was interviewing, as I was interviewing, I think it was Ignacio Rivera, and I said, look, I hate to say it, but I think the one positive thing that's coming of all this is, frankly, I think some of us white people are finally getting up off our asses and listening to what people of color have been telling us for years, and we're finally listening, and we're finally starting to get it a little bit. And so I think that's one good thing that has come of all this. But I don't know. I guess I don't know that I have a good answer of saying I've learned a thing. I think I'm just always learning. I'm always learning.
I love that.
Yeah, there's more diversity out there. There's just always more to learn from it. When I stop learning from my listeners is probably when I'll stop podcasting.
That's great. And I think one of the beautiful things about community is that none of us has all of the experiences. None of us has all the perspective. And when we have a community together the way we do in the polyamorous community and on this podcast and the community of your listeners, you can sort of learn from them and from each other, and it's kind of great. And that's one of the reasons we created the show, was to learn and share, because we don't all have the same experiences. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this. So Minx, we're coming up on the end of our time. I'm wondering where we can find you and where we can find all of the things related to you. That was really direct. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm all over the internet. So if you are a podcast listener, which presumably your listeners are, you can just go to your favorite podcatcher, whether it be Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, or I've been using Overcast lately after Apple really messed up the last iteration of their podcast app. And just do a search for Poly Weekly or Polyamory, and you will find us. We usually come up first or second, so we're pretty easy to find there. And then just hit that subscribe button. If you prefer to have an app, you can search for Poly Weekly on the Apple or Android or Google Play App Store, and you can get our app where you can just download. You can stream every single freaking episode that we've ever produced if you're one of those people. And apart from that, we're on the web at polyweekly.com. We have the show notes for all of our podcasts there, as well as all of our online courses on poly communication, and we will eventually, we're working really hard to get the user manual class onto an online course so people who cannot travel to live events to take the class with us can actually do it online. We're just like 3/4 of the way there. We're hoping to get that out by the spring. And all of our archives and FAQs are there. So if you're new to Poly, just pop over to the FAQ section. We're still building that out, but there's some good stuff there. And then, of course, Twitter at Cunning Minx, at Poly Weekly, Facebook.com/Poly Weekly. I think I'm Cunning.Minx on Instagram and all the things. So basically, if you search for Cunning Minx or Poly Weekly on social media, you'll find us.
Well, that's just all the places, all the things. Listeners,
Yep.
You've heard, go listen, because you're going to learn, you're going to enjoy, and Minx is just a dear to listen to and talk to. Anyway, want to say thank you, Minx. You are a delight. Thank you very much. Heather Beth?
Yeah, thank you so much, Minx. You are so fantastic. I think you're such a great resource for people in all kinds of relationships, even with themselves.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
How about Jesseline?
Minx, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been such an honor having you on.
And this has been the Brown Chicken, Brown Cow Show. Minx, you are delightful. And for those of you still listening to the very end of the podcast, what you need to do is stay tuned to next week when we also have another great podcaster, the amazing Cooper Beckett from Life on the Swing Set. Don't let the name fool you. They talk about everything that you want to know about non-monogamy as well. So anyway, this has been Monkey. And that's Jesseline, and over there is Heather Beth, and in the cloud over there is the amazing Minx. So you want to say bye-bye, Minx?
Waving goodbye from the cloud, and remember, it's not all about the sex.
For information on becoming a sponsor, advertising with us, or becoming a guest on our show, visit us at brownchickenbrowncowshow.com. All information in this show is copyright 2018 by the Brown Chicken Brown Cow Show and Podcast and Marry You Creative Solutions. All rights are reserved.
Brown chicken, brown cow. 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 This is fun. Brown chicken, brown cow. Brown chicken, brown cow.